when we think about using a tool like a psychedelic, this for some people is a once in a lifetime tool. So then what do people do for all the other days in between? Using a tool like Take 2 Minutes to train the mind for the positive, to do things like the gratitude journal is a simple example, to do things like 3 good things. Just notice 3 things every day that you're aware of, or that came into your awareness that you're thankful for. Just write them down and take 2 minutes, just text them to yourself. It truly trains the mind for the positive and starts unwiring those connections that we've made that have been, for many of us, on the negative side. And by doing that over a period of time after a psychedelic, I think you actually get a magnification of the results that can be done for anybody.
Hey, Matt, how you doing today?
Mark, I'm doing great. I'm feeling good about the world and ready to talk all things grief.
Very good. Very good. Well, if anyone hasn't seen Matt before on our videos, Matt is the founder of Sacred Path, a co-founder of Take 2 Minutes, and also an author of 2 books and a 3rd one upcoming, I do believe. So Matt's always very interesting, intelligent, and fun to listen and chat with. So I appreciate the time.
Well, Mark, I feel the same way, and I love doing these conversations with you, and I love Take 2 Minutes. So it gives us an excuse to do this periodically.
It very much does. So as mentioned, one of the topics that we're asked about occasionally is how to deal with grief. And it's a topic that has been talked about on a different podcast with a different host, is with Jamie. But I think everyone has a different perspective on this, and dealing with grief isn't the same for everybody. So I think different perspectives are important. So with Matt's expertise and knowledge in a different area, quite often with psychedelics, I'm interested on what your perspective on how to deal with grief is.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things happening. Yeah, I'm gonna start with psychedelics, and then I'm gonna move back into non-psychedelic. But let's start here because that's kind of what I talk about these days. So there's a lot of work being done with psilocybin specifically, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, as it relates to terminal patients, people who are experiencing, they've gotten a terminal diagnosis and they're experiencing depression, they're experiencing anxiety, they're experiencing mortality up close and personal. And in the research, whether that's from Johns Hopkins or UCLA or Yale or UCSF, they're finding that just 1 dose of psilocybin radically reduces depression, reduces anxiety, and doesn't change the fact that they're going to die, but it does change the quality of life for that remaining period of time. So that's kind of the medical model in psychedelics and one specific use. Now, I bring that up because in the sacred model, in the ceremonial model, what I'm seeing a lot of these entheogenic churches doing is also using entheogen psychedelics for the people bearing witness, the friends and the family. And when I put all of that together, I'm seeing people move through the various cycles of grief faster and with a different appreciation, a different understanding as it relates to death in this particular case. But the principle works for other reasons that people grieve. It can be a divorce. It can be a loss of a important job. It can be a significant disappointment. But I'm seeing that entheogens used with intention around this topic help people move through the process faster. And I think it is for the person dying. I think it's the awareness, the knowing that, okay, we are humans we're spiritual creatures having a human experience, but they feel less that this is the end versus this is just a piece. And then I think for everybody, it's a remembrance that they are, in their core, they are loved, they are worthy, and that this is just part of the process. And it's okay to feel, but it's not the end of the world, so to speak, for the person who is still living.
You hit on something interesting there, and I didn't even think about it on the onset, and that's that grief comes in different forms. It's not just someone's passing. There's other meanings or reasons why one might have grief. Do you think psilocybin helps with all the different aspects of grief? You kind of touched on it briefly there. It's not just a passing or someone terminally ill.
Yeah, I really do. I think the research. So Let me answer it this way. There's more research being done for terminally ill, and as it relates to that, there's lots of research for just what they would call treatment-resistant depression or anxiety, period. But I think the results are kind of, it's hard to argue with, regardless of what brought on the depression or the anxiety that's being felt. The use of psilocybin to reduce that is pretty radical. And we're also seeing it with things like MDMA. Now, we talked a little bit about MDMA last time you and I spoke. That's being used a lot for treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's kind of where all the headlines are these days. But when you turn off shame, blame, and guilt, and you turn on love, which is what that medicine does, it also is so you can help assess your role in various conversations. It can help lead to forgiveness and to understanding and to compassion and the lack of judgment. And that can lead to, if the person's around, conversations that might need to happen. And if the person's not around, forgiveness for whatever didn't happen during their time together.
I like the comment, turn on love. It's a good way of stating it. And there's a little bit of irony there, because if you recall, in the onset of Take 2 Minutes, I had called it the Love Company. Remember that?
I do, actually. I argued that was a great name, and I love that name. I think here's where I think Take Two then plays a really interesting role in the grief process. So when we think about using a tool like a psychedelic, this for some people is a once in a lifetime tool. For others, maybe let's go once in a season for some people who are psychonauts. But it is not an everyday medicine. This is not like an antidepressant. So then what do people do for all the other days in between? And I recommend, and we use actually in our community, we use Take 2 Minutes. After a psychedelic experience, the brain is in a period of about 30 days of really strong neuroplasticity. And during those 30 days, it is an ideal time to change behavior. So one of the things we talk about in psychedelics is psychedelics doesn't change who you are. You are, at your core, this loving beast. What we do is we have behaviors on top of that some of them serve us well and some of them don't. Psychedelics brings up the awareness. Oh, wow, maybe I don't want to do this, that, or the other thing. I want to do this. And using a tool like Take 2 Minutes to train the mind for the positive, to do things like the gratitude journal is a simple example. To do things like 3 good things. Just notice 3 things every day that you're aware of, or that came into your awareness that you're thankful for. Just write them down and take 2 minutes. Just text them to yourself. It truly trains the mind for the positive and starts unwiring those connections that we've made that have been, for many of us, on the negative side. And by doing that over a period of time, after a psychedelic, I think you actually get a magnification of the results that can be done for anybody. Just doing 3 good things, whether it's University of Pennsylvania or Berkeley. There's so much research around the tools that are here for just normal people. Well, now put that on top of a psychedelic experience, and it's tremendous.
I don't know if you know, I've held a couple of focus groups in Take 2 Minutes. The focus groups did 15 days of gratitude journaling, followed by a 15-day 3 good things exercise. And they continued gratitude journaling during the 3 good things. And I think, as you know, gratitude is best done in the morning hours. And then 3 good things is best done in the evening hours. And so ideally for the last 15 days, they gratitude journal in the morning, and then before bed did 3 good things. And from both focus groups, one had 11 participants and one had 22 participants. The 11 participants showed a 191% increase in positivity after 35 days of doing those 2 activities. And the 22 participants had a 171% increase in positivity, I think it was, or 161. I have the numbers top of my head. But it just shows that rewiring of the brain helps people get into a better mindset. And you're saying that after doing psychedelics, after doing, I think it's a journey or a ceremonial experience, your mind is well set up to receive that rewiring, for lack of better terms.
So now you've just given me a tremendous idea for my group, but I'll say it out loud just in case there are any therapists or any coaches listening. So this is the power of the platform. So I didn't even think about this, that maybe for before our next ceremony, what I should actually do is bring on the people before the ceremony, do an assessment, get a baseline, go through the ceremony, then do that 30-day program that we already do, and then show them, hey, here's 30 days later, here are the results. Right. I think people would love that.
They would. That's just the MDS questionnaire Matt's mentioning. So it's built in to take 2 minutes. Have them all do one prior to the ceremony or whatever you want, 15 days prior, and then one 35 days after doing these activities and ceremony. And you can compare their first baseline MDS against their second after effects.
Yeah, let's continue talking about that, just because so much of these conversations we have, we're talking about it for me as a user, but not for me as a group leader. And I don't know how, so again, if there's a coach listening, if there's a therapist listening, that whole side of this is really cool. The ability I'll just talk for me, the ability for me to take my cohorts and basically upload their phone numbers, have them receive messages, have them be able to log in and skip the parts of the sign-up process by using a code, and then the ability to send them direct messages, to send them different exercises is really powerful. And so, in one hand, I know Take 2 Minutes is a tool, but it's also really a communications platform for me. And I love that I know if I send an email, it's going to be, they might get read, it might not get read, it might sit in the inbox, I don't know. But if I send a text, they're going to read that.
92% read rate within 3 minutes is the statistic for text messages, correct? Yeah. And then, as you said, you as a group administrator can send messages to your group, to your whole group through Take 2 Minutes. And the beauty is, if you want to, as some people would want to hide their personal mobile number, the message is sent through Take 2 Minutes. You're not exposing your personal cell number. It's actually being communicated through Take 2 Minutes.
And you were getting teachers and professors who were using this for that same purpose, right? They were sending it out to their whole class and then keeping track whether the kids did students, I guess I should say, whether the students were actually doing the gratitude exercises or whatever the mindfulness exercises they were assigning.
Yes. Yeah, which is great. It's fun to see the usage that can be applied using Take 2 Minutes.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that these professors are using this and incorporating it both into classes about mindfulness, but then also just as a tool. I know I taught a couple classes at Duke over the last couple of years on mindfulness, and it was not, the whole class wasn't mindfulness, just my two little sections were, but these are the engineers. But it would be fun to have given these engineers, hey, here's actually a text-based tool you can use. So maybe I'll do that for the next time I teach you over there.
I know our time is short today, but before we wrap up, do you mind going back to the topic of grief? If I recall, what got you very interested in psychedelics is your experience with your first journey. Do you mind talking about that again?
I don't mind at all. I mean, I was 22 and my mom died. She was 49. My dad had died a couple years before that. My grandmother the year before that. My great aunt. So I had this period of time where everybody died, and this was the early 90s, where there was no oh, you should go see a therapist, or you should know. It was, funeral's over, back to college, or back to school, or sorry, back to work for me and back to college for my sister. And it was as low of an emotional period as I've ever had. And I gave up on God. I gave up on, I gave up on any concept of an afterlife. I was like, this is just nonsense. And then you just go on living. I went on living. I worked and I missed my mom. I got married and I missed my mom. I had kids and I missed my mom. And fast forward over 30 years, 35 years almost. And I was invited to a guided magic mushroom experience. And in that first experience, I connected with my mom, and I could feel her next to me, and I could almost pull it, I talk about it like a string from her to me to my kids. And I realized that I'm carrying her forward and my kids are carrying us forward. And it was so beautiful, and it was so safe, and it was so loving. And then I realized, wait a minute, I don't feel safe and loved in my everyday life. And I wanted to learn more about it. And that led me to go get a master's in psychology and neuroscience of mental health. And it led me to trying different psychedelics from different practitioners, MDs, PhDs, shaman, taitas. but it healed is the right word. I mean, I changing, believing that there is a sacred, believing that there is a knowing, I'm gonna try knowing, knowing that there's a world beyond this world. Knowing that she's not gone, she's just transformed, has been just tremendously, healing for me.
I appreciate you sharing that. It's a sad story, but also a happy story, just hearing you say it. So I appreciate you sharing that with any listeners. And I know you have another meeting to hit at the top of the hour here, so I appreciate your time as always. And hopefully we can chat again in the next 2 weeks and do something similar, and maybe next time for a little longer.
I would love both those things. And again, thank you for doing what you're doing. I mean, I know as a user of the tool, I love this. And as a group organizer, I love it. And I can't believe I didn't think about doing that questionnaire before this last group, but I'll definitely do that for the next one.
I'm excited to be a part of that. Let me know if I can help in any way.
Thanks, Mark. I'm going to jump, and thanks so much.
Thank you for your time, Matt. Thanks for listening. I hope you found that discussion helpful and interesting. If there are any topics you would like to hear discussed, head over to take2minutes.org and use the contact us form to submit your suggestions. Also, if you appreciate our content, sign up for an account at take2minutes.org. Subscriptions help us to continue generating new content. Thanks again.